They are, perhaps, the most famous laws in human history. 10 short, powerful statements etched onto stone tablets by the finger of God Himself, delivered to Moses atop a thundering Mount Sinai. The 10 Commandments. They are the ethical bedrock of Judaism and Christianity. They hang on the walls of courthouses and churches. They are invoked in political debates. They are seen as the ultimate, divine, and uniquely revealed moral code. The foundation of Western civilization. It feels absolute, original, straight from heaven. But what if I told you that long before Moses ever climbed Mount Sinai, kings in Mesopotamia were setting up stone pillars, or stelae, inscribed with remarkably similar laws? What if I told you archaeologists have unearthed legal codes, hundreds of years older than the biblical Exodus, that contain rules about oxen goring people, about punishments for assault an eye for an eye, and about the responsibilities of builders? What if many of the laws Moses received weren't entirely new, but were part of a common legal language spoken across the ancient Near East for centuries? Today, we journey from the sands of ancient Iraq to the foot of Mount Sinai to ask a challenging question. Are the 10 Commandments and the laws that follow a unique divine revelation? Or are they, in part, a brilliant Israelite remix of a much older Mesopotamian legal tradition? This is the hidden history of the law before Moses. To understand this, we first need to appreciate the sheer power of the 10 Commandments narrative. The story in the book of Exodus is unforgettable. The Israelites have just escaped slavery in Egypt. They arrive at the foot of Mount Sinai. The mountain is covered in smoke and fire, shaking violently. God descends in a thick cloud. Moses alone ascends into this terrifying presence. And there, amidst the thunder and lightning, he receives the law directly from the Almighty. This story establishes the authority of the laws. They are not the product of human reason or political compromise. They are divine commands, given in a moment of unparalleled cosmic revelation. This narrative has shaped Western thought for millennia. The 10 Commandments themselves, found in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5, are unique in their form: short, direct, apodictic shall not commands. They focus on fundamental principles: loyalty to the one God, the Sabbath, honoring parents, and prohibitions against murder, adultery, theft, false witness, and coveting. But the revelation at Sinai wasn't just 10 commands. It included a much larger body of law, found primarily in Exodus chapters 21 through 23, known as the Covenant Code. And it's here, in these detailed, specific, case-by-case laws, casuistic laws. If X happens, then Y is the consequence, that the parallels with older cultures become absolutely undeniable. For centuries, the Bible was, essentially, the oldest book we had from the ancient Near East. But starting in the 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists began digging in the ruins of the great Mesopotamian civilization Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and they found libraries. Not libraries of scrolls, but libraries of baked clay tablets and monumental stone inscriptions. And among these discoveries were something incredible: written law codes, far older than the time of Moses. The first major discovery was the Code of Hammurabi. Unearthed in 1901, this stunning black diorite stele, nearly 8 feet tall, was created by the Babylonian king Hammurabi around 1754 BCE, roughly 500 years before the Exodus. It contains 282 detailed laws covering everything from commerce and property to family law and criminal justice. And the parallels to the biblical Covenant Code were immediately apparent and shocking. Lex talionis, eye for an eye. Exodus 21:24 famously states, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Hammurabi's Code Law 196 states, if a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. And Law 200, if a man knock out a tooth of a man of his own rank, they shall knock out his tooth. The principle is identical. The goring ox, Exodus 21:28-32, has a detailed law about what happens if someone's ox gores and kills a person. It depends on whether the owner knew the ox was dangerous. Hammurabi's Code Laws 250252 has an almost identical set of laws, distinguishing between an unknown dangerous ox and one the owner knew was prone to goring. The legal logic is the same. Social classes. Both codes clearly differentiate punishments based on social class. In Hammurabi, striking a nobleman carried a much heavier penalty than striking a commoner or a slave. Similarly, while the Bible elevates the status of slaves compared to other ancient codes, it still clearly operates within a framework where slaves and free citizens are treated differently under the law. And Hammurabi wasn't even the first. Archaeologists later discovered even older codes. The Code of Lipit Ishtar Sumerian, c. 1930 BC, the Laws of Eshnuna Akkadian, c. 1900 BC, and the oldest known written law code in history, the Code of Ur-Nammu Sumerian, c. 2100 BCE, a full 800 years before Moses. These older codes contain similar laws regarding theft, injury, family matters, and property. It became undeniable. The specific types of laws found in the Bible, especially the casuistic laws of the Covenant Code, were not created in a vacuum. They were part of a vast, ancient, and shared legal tradition that had existed across the entire Fertile Crescent for centuries. So, how do we explain this? This discovery created a theological and historical crisis. Did the Bible just copy its laws from pagan kings? Scholars have proposed several ways to understand this relationship. 1. The common ancestor shared tradition model. This is perhaps the most widely accepted view today. It argues that both the Mesopotamian codes and the biblical laws independently drew upon a much older, unwritten, common Semitic legal and cultural tradition. Just as different languages can evolve from a common ancestor, different legal systems in the same region would naturally share core principles and address similar social problems like what to do with a dangerous ox. From this perspective, the similarities don't necessarily mean direct borrowing, but rather a shared cultural DNA. 2. The direct influence adaptation model. This view suggests that the Israelite authors were aware of these famous Mesopotamian law codes, especially Hammurabi's, which was copied and studied for centuries. This influence could have happened through general cultural osmosis, trade, or, most profoundly, during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC. Living in the heart of Mesopotamia, Jewish scribes compiling their traditions would have been intimately familiar with Babylonian law and literature. They may have consciously adopted and then theologically corrected or reframed these existing laws to fit their unique covenantal relationship with Yahweh. 3. The divine revelation within context model. This approach seeks to uphold the traditional belief in divine inspiration while acknowledging the historical evidence. It argues that God, when revealing the law to Moses, didn't create it out of thin air in a language no one could understand. Instead, God used the existing, familiar legal language and concepts of that time and place as the medium for his revelation. Just as God spoke Hebrew, not Martian, he gave laws that addressed the real world concerns like oxen of a specific ancient society, using legal forms they would recognize. The divinity in this view lies not necessarily in the originality of every single statute, but in the overall selection, adaptation, and theological purpose given to the law within the framework of God's covenant with Israel. These models aren't always mutually exclusive. The reality is likely a complex mix of shared tradition, cultural influence, and theological adaptation. This brings us to the crucial point. The similarities are fascinating, but the differences are revolutionary. If the biblical authors did draw upon older traditions, they didn't just copy, they transformed. They created something radically new, primarily through its unique theological framework. 1. Divine source and covenant. Hammurabi receives his laws from the sun god Shamash, the god of justice. But Shamash is just one god among many. The relationship is one of a king getting wisdom. In the Bible, the law comes from the one and only God, Yahweh, and it's given not just as wise advice, but as the terms of a binding covenant, a personal relationship between God and his chosen people. Obeying the law isn't just good citizenship. It's an act of loyalty within that relationship. 2. Monotheism and rejection of idolatry. The very first commandments: you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, are a radical departure from the polytheistic world of Mesopotamia. This theological foundation changes the purpose of all the laws that follow. 3. Elevated status of the vulnerable relatively. While still patriarchal and accepting of slavery like all ancient societies, the biblical laws show a significantly greater concern for the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the resident alien than the Mesopotamian codes. Hammurabi's code is obsessed with protecting the property rights of wealthy, free men. The biblical law repeatedly emphasizes justice and compassion for the marginalized, reflecting the Israelites' own experience as slaves in Egypt. Slaves in Israelite law had more rights and protections than slaves in Babylon. 4. Emphasis on internal motivation. While Hammurabi's code is almost entirely focused on external actions and punishments: if a man does X, then Y happens, the 10 Commandments include the unique prohibition against coveting. This is a law about an internal desire, a thought, not just an action. This hints at a deeper, more inward focus of morality that becomes central to later Jewish and Christian ethics. So, while the form of many specific laws might be shared, the theological heart and the ethical emphasis of the biblical law represent a profound revolution. Therefore, the story of the 10 Commandments and the laws of Sinai is far richer and more complex than a simple tale of divine dictation in a vacuum. It is a story deeply embedded in the history, culture, and legal traditions of the ancient Near East. And this leads us to our final crucial debate. Does discovering the historical context, the parallels with Hammurabi, diminish the authority or divinity of the 10 Commandments? Does it make them merely a human product, a Mesopotamian remix? Or does it make them more compelling? Does it show a God who works within human history, speaking to people in a language they understand, taking the best of existing human wisdom and elevating it, transforming it through the lens of a unique covenant relationship? Is the miracle of the 10 Commandments their absolute originality out of nothing? Or is the miracle their brilliant, inspired transformation of existing materials into something ethically and theologically revolutionary? Let me know what you think respectfully in the comments below. Where does the authority of these ancient laws come from for you? If you found this deep dive into the hidden history of the law fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the real stories behind our sacred texts. Thanks for watching.